Chapter 20, Locomotion and Movement, Disorders of the Muscular and Skeletal System. That the first disorder, disease we are going, that is myasthenia gravis. Myasthenia gravis. I have some limitations here that whatever the symptoms and disorder issues are all exclusively based on the NCRT textbook. We are going through that. And do remember the myasthenia gravis is very important in the form of autoimmune disorder. So this is autoimmune disorder. Myasthenia gravis is autoimmune disorder. That means that it is because of the self destruction. We can say simply self destruction. Our immune system itself is going to do the damage. We can say autoimmune disorder. That where it affects the neuromuscular junction. This disorder is going to affect neuromuscular junction. If you recall the muscle contraction, there we said like that nerve endings, axon terminals are going to form the synapse with the sarcolemma. So we call them as neuromuscular junction. So here that our immune system, overactiveness of the immune system, that means the destruction of this particular junction, whatever the receptors present there, that by feeling them as an antigen, that we produce antibodies against them, they do the destruction of that particular area. Okay, so that we can say autoimmune disorder. So this autoimmune disorder is termed as myasthenia gravis. You should remember like that. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder and it affects neuromuscular junction. Neuromuscular junction. What are the symptoms? The symptoms of this particular disease results into the symptoms include that leads to the neuromuscular junction is affected. So that what can be expected here? It leads to fatigue. That leads to the fatigue. Reduce some size, leading to fatigue. Then weakening and paralysis of the skeletal muscle, particularly skeletal muscle. Weakening and paralysis of the skeletal muscle. We can say these are going to be the symptoms of this particular disease, the symptoms, effects, and the type of disorder. These three are going to be very important in this case. That it's an autoimmune disorder, it affects the neuromuscular junction, it leads to fatigue, weakening, and paralysis of the skeletal muscle. So that is myasthenia gravis. Okay, next, the second word, the disease, the disorders of the muscular and skeletal system. The second disorder is going to be muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy. We used to say it as Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy. Okay, so this is also going to be a disorder here. That this is genetic disorder. That is very important thing to remember here. This is a genetic disorder. That means a particular gene is going to be effective here. Simply, we can say genetic disorder. If you go in depth, we can say X-linked recessive disorder. That means in these particular genes are present on the X chromosome, and that particular recessive condition is going to make this disorder, genetic disorder. We just remember it as genetic disorder, no matter. Muscular dystrophy is a genetic disorder. So, what are going to be the symptoms here? That other muscular dystrophies are also present here, but we can say mostly this is genetic disorder and it is an X-linked recessive disorder. What can be expected here? So, here the progressive degeneration of skeletal muscle. Again, the effect to the skeletal muscle itself. The progressive degeneration of skeletal muscle can be expected in muscular dystrophy. Okay, so muscular dystrophy is a genetic disorder. That effect is going to be on the skeletal muscle, the progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscle. Slowly, the person that lose the contraction ability, finally leads to the death even in final cases. Final cases, that means they don't get much age. In case of Duchenne muscular dystrophy as an X-linked recessive disorder, by age 15, 20, to below 20 itself, the person may die even. because of this particular disorder. So much dangerous, we can say here. Okay. So that number 3 in the series, tetany. Disorder tetany. Tetany. So what is tetany? Rapid spasms. Immediately when we say tetany, we should remember this word, the key word for this, rapid spasms. What is spasm? That wild contraction, muscle contraction, we can say the wild muscle contraction. Okay, so we can say it as wild muscle contraction. You do remember this as like this wild muscle contractions. We can say rapid spasms, which leads to the tetany. Okay, so why we know the calcium ion importance in the series of muscle contraction. How calcium ion are very important, we know. So whenever the person, the low calcium concentration when is seen in the blood, the low calcium ion concentration, which leads to this kind of disorder, we can see. Some hormonal reasons are also there, but along with that, that whatever the hormone, even those who are participating in the calcium metabolism, if that hormone fails, again symptom comes here only. Okay, so that I'm talking about the parathormone and calcitonin of thyroid gland. So they're even they're going to maintain the calcium ion concentration in the blood and of the tissues. So that instead of using that, simply we can say like that: when the low calcium ion concentration in the blood, if concentration of the calcium ions are low in the blood, so we can expect the tetany. Okay, so that is tetany. So let's move on. That we have 3 disorders here. Let's move on. The 3 disorders we are seeing till the time: myasthenia gravis, muscular dystrophy, and tetany. Myasthenia gravis, muscular dystrophy, and tetany. So just I am writing keywords here. Do remember, myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder. Muscular dystrophy is a genetic disorder. Tetany, we can say hormonal disorder. That means because of the deficiency of some certain hormone. We can say in a series when you want to say. Then affects myasthenia gravis affects neuromuscular junction, that particularly skeletal muscles, and here the progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscles in muscular dystrophy, and the wild muscle contractions, that rapid spasms we say here in the tetany. The symptoms here that leads to fatigue, that weakening and paralysis of the skeletal muscle in case of myasthenia gravis. In case of myasthenia gravis, and in case of muscular dystrophy, it's a genetic disorder. We said the progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscle. The tetany itself, the symptom, you have to remember it as rapid spasm. Reason, low calcium ion concentration in the blood. Okay, so these are the 3 diseases from locomotion and movement. Now moving on. The 4th one, arthritis. The well-known word, isn't it? Arthritis. Joint pain. In general, we use it to say it has joint pain, arthritis. Okay, there are so many arthritis are there, various types of arthritis are there. Not going into the much details in that particular area. Simply, we are going to say it as inflammation as due to the inflammation of joint. Inflammation can be caused by various other reasons, the different reasons we have. Then simply you have to remember it as arthritis means inflammation of joints. That's all. Okay, next, osteoporosis. Again, calcium related disorder, osteoporosis. Porosity, pores means we can say simply the holes. Okay, the osteoporosis. Let us see the characteristic features. Osteoporosis is an age related disorder. It's an age related disorder. Should remember it as it's an age related disorder. The properties that characterized by decreased bone mass. Bone mass, what does it mean? Again, calcium. Calcium is a major component of the bone. Calcium phosphate, that or calcium hydroxyapatite, we use it to say. that decreased bone mass, calcium content is going to be reduced over, and that leads to the increased chances of fracture. When the decreased bone mass is seen, it increases the chances of fracture. Fractures for a minute injury even may lead to the breakdown of the bone. That's what we can say. Porosity in the bone is increased over because of the decreased bone mass. Okay, then that various reasons are there. Various reasons are there that we should go with the text reason in case of the decreased estrogen levels is a common disease. That the symptom we are talking about, the decreased estrogen levels is going to be that reason for the osteoporosis. Osteoporosis, some endocrine reasons are there, that the various nutritive problems may lead to the osteoporosis, osteomalacia, osteoarthritis. They're all calcium related disorders here. But in our text, it was mentioned that it is because of decreased levels of. See here how much importance I am giving here. People will confuse when it come in examination. That is a common cause. Should remember it as estrogen level. So that means in case of menopause, this is going to be a biggest symptom, isn't it? That osteo people, the women which are facing the menopause, when the estrogen levels are getting decreased over in that particular people in the women, we can see this osteoporosis. Okay, in that angle it is explained here. That various other reasons are also there. So here in the text it was mentioned. So that's why I'm saying again and again, decreased levels of estrogen is a common cause for osteoporosis. Okay, next, the last, gout. Next one is gout. The last one we are talking. Gouty arthritis, even we can say it as. So just following this, what is this? Gout is a disorder, we can say, because of inflammation of joints. Inflammation of joint. We can define it as inflammation of joint. Because this is even arthritis. As I said to you, arthritis having so many reasons. When I say osteoarthritis, the joint pain because of low calcium. When I say gouty arthritis, what is the reason for the gouty arthritis? Due to accumulation of, it is due to the accumulation of uric acid crystals. So remember this, as due to the accumulation of the uric acid crystals that leads to arthritis. What do you call? Gouty arthritis. Gout, should remember it as. So we have 6 disorders here from the chapter locomotion and movement. Moving on, that let's take a look back again here. Myasthenia gravis. It's an autoimmune disorder. It affects neuromuscular junction and symptoms which we can say it leads to fatigue, weakening, and paralysis of the skeletal muscle. Next, muscular dystrophy, genetic disorder, progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscle is going to be the effect here. Tetany, rapid spasms, we say, the wild contractions. Then low calcium ion concentration in the blood is going to be the reason for tetany. Arthritis, joint pain, inflammation of joints, we can say. Osteoporosis, it's an age-related disorder, decreased bone mass is going to be the symptom, increase the chance which leads to the fracture of the chances of fractures are going to be increased here in the case. And next, the decreased levels of the estrogen is a common cause. The common cause for the osteoporosis is the decreased levels of estrogen. Next, gouty arthritis, gout, inflammation of joints due to the accumulation of the uric acid crystals. Due to the accumulation of the uric acid crystals, as I mentioned to you earlier, these disorders are very little in number in text here, but we are going to get that must question here. From this area, we're going to get question must. Okay. So moving on to the endocrine disorders here, endocrine disorders from chapter 22, chemical control and coordination. chapter 22. Here it is. The name of the chapter, the human endocrine system, the chemical coordination and integration. Let me write the chapter name, chemical coordination and integration. So from this chapter, various hormonal disorders we have. So we will take a look on that particular hormonal disorders here. Let's take a look on the hormonal disorders. Number one, we'll go in the linear order of the textbook. In that, like the previous chapters, that it was not mentioned in the text in the end. It was mentioned along with the particular endocrine glands. So when by people, when you are reading, you just don't search in the end of the chapter. Till the time from digestion absorption onwards, till the time where we searched here in the end of the chapter, we have the disorder. So we just we can go to the end of the chapter, we can read the disorders. But here in chemical coordination integration, along with the hormone activity and function, these particular are mentioned over. Okay. So let me come with the disorders here. The pituitary dwarfism, the first one here, the pituitary dwarfism. Pituitary dwarfism. Pituitary dwarfism is because of hyposecretion, that hormonal problem here. Which hormone is going to affect this particular growth hormone? The hyposecretion of the growth hormone. So hormonal disorders, we have to mention whether it is because of the hyposecretion or hypersecretion, that we need to mention here. So hyposecretion and the name of the hormone. So reason we are writing, hyposecretion of the growth hormone results in the stunted growth. We can say that symptom is going to be the stunted growth. So the stunted growth, which we can say as there is no uh, mental disability here. This is very important to be noticed over. There is no mental disability in this case, only the height problem, pituitary dwarfism. So when growth hormone levels are decreased over, only the problem will come. The children will not grow properly. That's it. There is no mental disability. That is very, very important to remember here. When you compare with the cretinism of the thyroid gland in the thyroxine hormone, there is a mental disability you can see here. In pituitary dwarfism, there is no mental disability. The person, except the height, remaining aspects is going to be normal. Okay. Next, pituitary gigantism. The next disorder is going to be the pituitary gigantism. Then in this case, pituitary gigantism. Here, hypersecretion of the growth hormone. To remember it as hypersecretion of growth hormone. Hypersecretion of growth hormone. Same, just growth hormone when it is reduced over in children, and in both cases, you have to see the growing age it is. In children, that's why we'll write here. In both cases, it occurs in children. So hypersecretion of the growth hormone leads to the pituitary gigantism. Number 3, acromegaly. Acromegaly. Here again, we are still in pituitary gland. Acromegaly. So excess secretion of the growth hormone in adults, especially in middle age. So that we should mention in middle age. That means when the growth is completed, excess secretion of the growth hormone. What we write it as excess secretion, hyper secretion of growth hormone. So hyper secretion of the growth hormone, we call it as excess secretion of the growth hormone in adults, especially in middle age, can result in the severe disfigurement, especially in the face. The severe disfigurement of the face, we'll write it as severe disfigurement of the face. We call it as acromegaly. The disorder, acromegaly. Hypersecretion of the growth hormone. So do remember all the pituitary issues I just made on one page. So acromegaly, excess secretion, the growth of the growth hormone in adult, especially in middle age, can result in severe disfigurement, especially at the face. We can say called acromegaly. So acromegaly may leads to serious complications and premature death even if unchecked. If it is not recognized in initial stages, may leads to the death also. So it leads to serious complications and premature death if unchecked. Acromegaly is hard to diagnose in the early stages. That is also a problem here. It is hard to diagnose in early stages and often goes to undetected for many years until changes in external features become noticeable. So do remember this. The acromegaly is lead to serious complications and premature death if unchecked. The disease is hard to diagnose in the early stages and often goes undetected for many years until the changes in the external features become noticeable. So that is the issues of the acromegaly. The major issues to be remembered, it is because of hypersecretion of growth hormone. And the symptom externally, as we are saying that it take a longer period of time. External features, appearance of the symptomological issues here are very less externally. So when it in severe cases, we can see the disfigurement of the face, severe disfigurement of the face, we can say. Next, all these are the pituitary gland issues. Particularly, we just talk about growth hormone. The growth hormone leads to the gigantism, dwarfism, and acromegaly. And now we'll go with the neurohypophysis of the pituitary gland, which leads to a disorder called the diabetes insipidus, not to be confused with diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus because of insulin hormone. Here we are talking about diabetes insipidus. Do remember that name, insipidus. Insipidus, which means tasteless. Excess urination is a common symptom in case of diabetes mellitus and diabetes insipidus in both cases. But in insipidus, there is no sugar in the water. That means it's not a glucose disorder. Simply, we can say in case of diabetes insipidus that it is going to influence what is the actual function of the ADH. If you understand, we can understand here. On above the distal convoluted tubule, the ADH hormone is having some impact and influence. The presence of ADH hormone makes more absorption of water. It gives more absorption of water. Okay, so we call it as facultative water reabsorption. Such kind of water reabsorption said to be facultative water reabsorption. Means if ADH present, we absorb water. If ADH absent, we don't absorb water. So that means ADH has a direct influence and impact on this particular area in the DCT. Okay, so an impairment affecting the synthesis or release of ADH, an impairment and effect the synthesis or release of ADH. Wait a minute. An impairment or affecting synthesis or release of ADH results in diminished ability of the kidney to conserve water, leading to the water loss and dehydration. Simply, kidney, or we can say directly the area, the frog, distal convoluted tubule. That symptom is given like that. An impairment affecting synthesis or release of ADH results in a diminished ability of the kidneys to conserve water, leading to water loss and dehydration. So the excess loss of water, excess urination is going to be simply the symptom for this particular diabetes insipidus. So what we'll write here, hyposecretion of ADH. Symptom, that reason will write why it is, right, hyposecretion of hormone ADH, antidiuretic hormone, or we can say vasopressin, released from hypothalamic neurons and stored in the neurohypophysis of the pituitary gland. Then their hyposecretion leads to ADH. Hyposecretion leads to diabetes insipidus. Okay. Next disorder, we are moving to thyroid gland. We have more disorders there. Then let's start with goiter, simple goiter disease, we can say. simple goiter. Simple goiter, or we can call the hypothyroidism. Simple goiter or hypothyroidism here. Here, the hypothyroidism in different cases we can explain. Uh, just goiter can be explained with hypothyroidism in other reasons. So let's talk about in detail here. The deficiency of iodine in our diet results in hypothyroidism and enlargement of the thyroid gland, commonly called goiter. So the key word to be remembered here, it is due to the deficiency of iodine. Deficiency of iodine. Okay, so for that we need to know little bit information about the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland produce the hormone thyroxine because of two components required for the production of this particular thyroxine, iodine plus an amino acid called tyrosine. Okay, so where we get the iodine? Iodine will get through the diet. We'll get the iodine through the diet only. So the that particular lobes of the thyroid gland are preparing this particular thyroxine hormone that we may call it as T3 or T4, triiodothyronine or tetraiodothyronine. Whatever it is, they require iodine plus tyrosine. Imagine the tyrosine enters in the thyroid gland, but iodine is not coming in the diet. Tyrosine entered, iodine is not coming. Tyrosine entered. If the iodine is there, that may form the thyroxine hormone. They may send it out through the blood capillarization, through the blood. They may send it out to the required body parts. But tyrosine is coming, but iodine is not coming. The anxiety will rise over in the vesicles of the thyroid gland, the lobules of the thyroid gland. To absorb the iodine, they start enlarging. Their anxiety makes over the lobes of the thyroid, the lobules of the thyroid gland are going to be enlarged over to absorb. The anxiety makes over enlarge. That results the enlargement of the thyroid gland. So that's what we are talking about. That hypothyroidism, we can say, in hypothyroidism, in what manner? That there is no secretion, synthesis even not happening here because of inadequate supply of iodine. Okay, so this is the case that in this particular case, what we can expect here, enlargement of the thyroid gland. That is going to be the symptom. So I just said the reason about why the thyroid gland is going to be enlarged. Why that in a hypothyroidism case, why hypothyroidism? Iodine supplies is inadequate. Then why enlargement? If there is inadequate supply, why enlargement? Accumulation of the more tyrosine and more anxiety of the lobules to absorb the iodine. Their anxiety makes over this particular. So this generally we use it to say that this kind of issue only when the persons, those who don't have the iodine availability through the diet. Endemic reasons, that endemic areas, which we can say here, this kind of problem can be expected over. So that's it about goiter or simple goiter. In other terms, we may call it as simple goiter. Okay. So next, we are discussing about the same again, hypothyroidism condition during pregnancy. Hypothyroidism during pregnancy causes the defective development and maturation of the growing baby. It affects the growth of the baby. That baby is called cretin. In that case, the baby is called cretin, and the disorder is going to be cretinism. Okay, so I'll write here. Here also hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism due to deficiency of iodine. So synthesis problem. So in this case also hypothyroidism during pregnancy. So hypothyroidism during pregnancy, what kind of childbirth can be expected? Cretin. Okay, so cretin, the child called cretin here. Child called cretin, the disease called cretinism. The mother which gives birth to such kind of child, what can be expected here? The symptoms can be expected in this particular case. In this case, the mental retardation, as I said to you earlier. Here also dwarfism is one of the symptom like pituitary dwarfism, but along with that, mental retardation is seen over. It affects the brain also. Low intelligent quotients, low IQ. that very less IQ, these kind of children, they have low intelligent quotient can be expected, and abnormal skin symptoms, even exam, very important in examination point of view. Deaf mutism, abnormal skin, deaf mutism are going to be the symptoms here, that this is going to be a biggest problem in the people. And like as I said to you, cretin is stunted growth. Stunted growth we are seen earlier also. The need to compare with the stunted growth we are seen in the pituitary dwarfism in children, because of hyposecretion of growth hormone. There is stressed over, they mentioned over, there is no mental disorder in that case, only growth problem. But here, that hypothyroidism during pregnancy, the mother is not inadequate supply of that thyroxine hormone during inadequate production of thyroxine hormone during pregnancy in the mother. What kind of birth, that the child birth, cretin, the birth can be expected here. The cretin, that disease called cretinism, with the stunted growth, mental retardation, low intelligence quotient, and abnormal skin, and deaf mutism can be expected over. Okay. So that in adult women, hypothyroidism may affect the menstrual cycle also. Hypothyroidism. So see here, in different stages, hypothyroidism is having different kind of problems here. So that you have to notice hypothyroidism in adult women. That means thyroxine is the unique characteristic features that thyroxine is having, that various functions thyroxine is dealing with. That's why hypothyroidism in different stages is going to make a different kind of problem. In hypothyroidism, we are now talking about the adult women. Hypothyroidism means the secretion of thyroxine hormone less, leads to what? What? It may cause the menstrual cycle, it may cause the menstrual cycle to become that irregular. In these people, the menstrual cycle become irregular, affect the menstrual cycle. Okay. Then along with that, the development of nodules of the thyroid gland, the rate of synthesis and secretion of the thyroid hormone, that it leads to the cancer. Okay, we'll make separate here. So just remember this point: hypothyroidism in adult women may cause menstrual cycle to become regular. To become regular, it may like PCOD problems. We can say polycystic ovarian disorder like problems will come here. All these are issues of hypothyroidism. Okay, goiter. Here, thyroxine hormone is no way in the production. There is no supply of iodine. The enlargement of the thyroid. All these group people can be expected with this particular simple goiter disease. Cretinism, that during pregnancy or during the growing ages, early ages, that the thyroxine inadequate supply, inadequate production of the thyroxine hormone, the child we call cretin, the disease. Cretinism, stunted growth, mental retardation, low IQ, abnormal skin, deaf mutism are going to be additional symptoms along with the stunted growth. Then hypothyroidism in adult women may cause menstrual cycle to become regular. Further complications even can be expected over. Okay. All these are going to say hypothyroidism cases. Okay. Next, how does the hyperthyroidism will expect? That means when thyroxine hormone levels increase in the body, what can be expected here? Hyperthyroidism. So the hyperthyroidism. So in which condition the hypothyroidism can be expected over? That maybe when a person get a cancer in the thyroid gland, cancer of the thyroid gland. That means we know cancer. Cancer means the uncontrolled division of the cell. That means if any uncontrolled division of the thyroid gland that expected over have seen due to the cancer, we know that additional cells will be developed over, or due to the development of the nodules of the thyroid gland. Development of nodules in the thyroid. So due to the development of nodules in the thyroid gland, that may be the reason for the hyper secretion of thyroxine hormone. And this this effect, that means increased levels of the thyroxine is going to affect hues here, that hypersecretion. We have some more reasons, even like hyperthyroidism. We know the thyroxine hormone influenced by the TSH hormone from the thyroid gland, isn't it? Thyroid stimulating hormone of the pituitary gland. So if increased levels of the TSH also that affects. So do remember when we go with hyperthyroidism condition or hypothyroidism condition, the doctor will ask over the three tests: T3, T4, and TSH test. They recommend T3, T4. These are thyroxine hormone. Along with that, he recommend TSH test also. So we are talking in the angle of only thyroid, like cancer of the thyroid gland, development of the nodules in the thyroid gland, which increases the abnormal high levels of the thyroxine hormone, which leads to a condition we say hyperthyroidism, which adversely affect the body physiology, we can say. But the TSH also one of the reason, we can say. Okay, so what are the issues? What are the diseases due to the hyperthyroidism? The first we are going exophthalmic goiter. The disease exophthalmic goiter, we can say. It's there in the name, exophthalmic goiter. The kind of hyperthyroidism is characterized by the enlargement of thyroid gland. Very important to be remembered. It is characterized by enlargement of. We said so many reasons that exophthalmic is characterized by enlargement of thyroid gland. Enlargement of thyroid gland is going to be reason for this particular exophthalmic goiter. It's a form of hyperthyroidism. It is due to enlargement of the thyroid gland. What are the symptoms? The protrusion of eyeball, exophthalmic. See that protrusion of eyeball. We can say eyeballs are getting protruded over. That's why exophthalmic. Ophthalmic means eyes. So they come out. We can say. So protrusion of eyeballs. We know the thyroxine hormone is in the BMR, basic metabolic rate. So increases thyroxine, increases the BMR. Basic metabolic rate is going to be increased over. And hyperactivities of the metabolic activities may lead to weight loss even. What we can expect, weight loss even can be expected over. So these conditions, protrusion of the eyeball, increased BMR, weight loss, all these particular condition, we can say exophthalmic goiter. We have another name for this disorder, that is Graves disease. Exophthalmic goiter or Graves disease, the name of scientist Graves. We can say Graves disease. So that's it about the hyperthyroidism. You can say hyperthyroidism. So with this, we can understand thyroxine hormone, how important in the body, that hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. By looking all this, we can understand. So, simply remember the keyword deficiency of iodine leads to disease called goiter, and here also the enlargement of the thyroid. But there is a difference. Enlargement of the thyroid gland due to the cancer, that means uncontrolled division. Here nodules make the enlargement, but this enlargement is different. It is due to lack of that particular iodine. Iodine deficiency makes over the anxiety conditions, that to absorb more iodine, that lobules of the thyroid gland is going to be increased in the size. Okay, leave it. Just go through this goiter, deficiency of iodine. It is a hypothyroidism condition, and it leads to enlargement of the thyroid gland. Next, cretinism. It's a condition, hypothyroidism again. During pregnancy, during the growing ages of children, the cretins can be expected. We call it as stunted growth. Mental retardation, low IQ, abnormal skin, and deaf mutism are going to be the symptoms. Next, the additional we say hypothyroidism is also going to affect the woman. That in adult women, it may cause the menstrual cycle to become irregular. Next, hyperthyroidism cases. Various reasons are there. Cancer of the thyroid gland, development of the nodules in the thyroid gland, And the exophthalmic goiter or Graves' disease, we can say hyperthyroidism. One of the effects is going to be exophthalmic goiter or Graves' disease, which is characterized by the enlargement of thyroid gland and protrusion of eyeballs, increased BMR, weight loss are going to be symptoms for this. Okay. Now we are moving on to the Addison's disease. Addison disease. Addison's disease. Graves' disease, Addison disease. Please don't confuse in between that Graves' disease we said because of the hypersecretion of the thyroxine hormone. Now Addison's disease. It is hyposecretion of the hormones of the adrenal cortex. Due to the hyposecretion of the hormones of the adrenal cortex, under secretion or hyposecretion, we can say adrenal cortex. This is very, very important to remember, not to confuse between the Graves and Addison. Okay, so it is due to the underproduction or hyposecretion of the hormones of the adrenal cortex, which it alters the carbohydrate metabolism. This the effect is going to be it alters the carbohydrate metabolism, Addison disease. Okay, alters the carbohydrate metabolism, and which it leads to acute weakness. Carbohydrate, we know they give energy for us. So, alteration of the carbohydrate metabolism gives the acute weakness and fatigue. Alsipod. Word fatigue which means alsipod. Fatigue. That Addison's disease, we say hyposecretion of the hormones of adrenal cortex. Hormones of adrenal cortex. Of will write here. And the symptoms include that effect include alters the carbohydrate metabolism and acute weakness, fatigue can be expected here. Okay, so that's it about Addison's disease. Okay, along with that, there are so many other diseases are also present in this case, but just we are going with only the text disorders, NCRT text given disorders only. So first of all, we'll go with them. Then after, we'll discuss the remaining other disorders which are influencing the human life. Next, I'm moving towards the diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus. We have seen earlier diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus because of the undersecretion of the antidiuretic hormone of pituitary gland. Now it is diabetes mellitus. That we can say it is undersecretion or hyposecretion of the insulin. Disorder because of hyposecretion. The world famous disease, isn't it? Hyposecretion of directly will write the hormone insulin. Beta cells of islets of Langerhans of the endocrine part of the pancreas. The insulin is so what is the basic function of the insulin? Insulin generally converts the conversion of the glucose into glycogen. So when insulin deficiency can be seen over, we can say this activity is not going to happen. That means that leads to the raising of the glucose. That activity doesn't happen. So what can be expected? The glucose will be raised. Raising of the glucose in the blood, we can say hyperglycemia. Prolonged hyperglycemia is leads to the complex disorder, we can say diabetes mellitus. Okay, which is that associated with the high glucose, that rise of glucose in the blood we call hyperglycemia. Then here when blood levels, when glucose levels are increased, what we can do? We can eliminate it through urine. So that's why polyuria is going to be one of the regular symptom for this particular case. Polyuria, excess urination, we can say polyuria. And polydipsia, polyphagia are three basic symptoms. We used to say here, we're not moving on because these words are not there in NCRT. Excess urination, we'll write it as. The excess glucose will be sent to the excess urination. Do remember, excess urination is there in the diabetes insipidus also, but there is no glucose in that urine. That's what I said over. Insipidus means tasteless. Here, excess urination because of to remove the excess glucose which is formed in the blood due to the absence of insulin or due to the under secretion of the insulin. Okay, and that leads to the formation of harmful compounds. This is very important symptom to remember here. The ketone bodies are going to be that one of the symptoms for the diabetes, formation of the harmful compounds like ketone bodies. And diabetes patients, how we treat them? We treat them with the help of insulin. Insulin injections can be given under severe conditions we are talking about. That metformin is the general medicine we use for insulin, diabetes condition. That severe condition, they will use the doctor may suggest that insulin injections also. So what we say it as hyposecretion, and the symptom what we call hyperglycemia. Increased levels of the glucose in the blood, we can say hyperglycemia. The symptom, the characteristic feature. Okay, these are the major disorders which we taken from the textbook here, NCERT textbook from chapter number 16 to the chapter number 22. I request all of you to make a table from making the target of chapter number 16 to 22, minimum one question, or most times may get two questions even from this particular area. Very small area. So we are reading it separately because along the text people will be exhausted over when they reach to the end of the chapter, and all these disorders are given in the end of the chapter only. So let us start end at the beginning. That means we are straight away focusing on the disorder. Myasthenia gravis, muscular dystrophy, tetany, arthritis, osteoporosis, gout disorder, and pituitary dwarfism, pituitary gigantism, acromegaly, and diabetes insipidus, simple goiter, cretinism, and exophthalmic goiter or Graves' disease. These are the different disorders which from chapter number 16 to chapter number 22, and we'll make that one more session for more other disorders in the plus 2 also. Here plus 1 we discuss about. We'll go with in plus 2 also the various disorders. Okay.